Houston area woman who has 2 black sons is crying out for change in a broken judicial system.
She attended Jack Yates, the same alma mater as George Floyd. Let's hear why she's fearful when her sons leave home. But first, welcome to the chamber where healing begins.
First, today we are joined by someone who is very passionate about what is going on in society. She is a former grad of Jack Yates High School, the same high school George Floyd attended. And so she's here to tell us about her plight and what is going on in her life. She has 2 sons, and you had mentioned things have been just a little iffy lately.
Yes, it's just ironic, and just this week, last week was my birthday, and my older son, Cleveland Bailey, he's a college grad. He's working a 2nd degree. He was here visiting me. He has a very good job in IT, and he was here visiting me for my birthday, and he didn't tell me, but he told his dad. He just told me the story today because he didn't want me to be upset for my birthday, but he was here in Humble at a mall, Dearbrook Mall, and he was coming out of, I think it was Dillard's. He was in the parking lot buying me a birthday gift. He was parked, mind you, and just as he was getting ready to exit the parking lot, a cop pulled up behind him and ran his license plates, immediately came over. You know, my sons were told at a very young age what and how to do if you were approached by the police, because I wanted my boys to stay alive. So they were already taught, time they start to drive, you know, immediately ask the officer, put your hands up the window so your hands are in view. Make sure that you ask permission to get your wallet. So he did all those things. He presented his ID and everything. And the police proceeded to tell him to get out the car, and they handcuffed my child. Called for 4 additional police officers. I'm gonna try not to get emotional. That is just over policing. My son was alone. Why do you need 4 calls police officers to back you up? That's a way to just intimidate, you know. And they detained him, handcuffed him, put him in the back of the patrol car. They called for a record that showed up on the scene, and they asked permission to search his truck, which he knew that if he didn't ask permission, they were gonna do it anyway. They tore my child's truck up, handcuffed him, detained him for over an hour, never told him what was going on. And then they later came and told him that your truck came back stolen. Remind you, my son's name is Cleveland Bailey Jr. If you ran those license plates, my husband's name is Cleveland Bailey Sr. If you ran the license plates, it will come back as Cleveland Bailey Sr., and you look at his license plates, you mean to tell me you can't put the 2 together and you're gonna say that my child's license plate, the car was stolen? And to make a long story short, after they couldn't find anything on my child, they gave my baby a ticket for littering for $187. And the cop came and told him that, you know, I could have wrote you a lot of other tickets, but I'm cutting you a break, that I'm gonna only give you a ticket for littering, in which my son never did throw anything away. But my son, and it's so sad that he didn't even want to file a complaint and scared that he may have retaliation. Mm-hmm. And what hurts me the most that you don't even want to fight for justice because you're afraid if you speak out or act out, what will happen to you? And even my husband is from Mississippi, and he has 3 degrees from Louisiana Tech, and he just want to just pay the ticket and just leave it alone. In other words, let's just do what the white people say so they won't mess with us. And we're in 2000. It's no reason why that something happened to you, and you train your child to do all the right things. He's college educated, he's working, he wasn't stealing anything, so now it's a crime not to be black while driving, be black while sitting in a parking lot. You're gonna be harassed by police officers, and you educated, 24 years old, and my husband is too, 60 years old with 3 degrees, and both of them afraid to even go forward, but I'll be damned, I'm not gonna be quiet.
So what you're saying is, no matter what you have, what you possess, if you are an African American, you are subject to inequality or just injustice.
And I want to say, for some reason, I have 2 sons. My oldest son is fairly dark-skinned, like George Floyd, he was about his complexion. And what I've seen, I don't know what about else, the darker you are, the more you are harassed. The bigger you are or the darker you are harassed even more. My son was coming from college. He was in college and he had his roommate. They played football and the cop just pulled him over because he was driving a red vehicle. We had to take him out the red car because he was getting stopped. And this is what the officer said as they approach him. They always hold their guns. Always hand on their gun as they approach. And
intimidating, very intimidating.
This is what he reached over and said, your boys have any felonies? And my son said, no, excuse me, we have a couple degrees. I'm an undergrad student. He's working his master's. We both are students at Texas A&M Corpus, and we're on our way back to school. That's the first thing he asks, is you have any felonies? You boys have any felonies?
So as a mother, you're outraged.
I'm angry. I'm angry because when they were little, I can control where they go. I can control where they were, but now they're young men and they're out in the world. Even now, we have a terrible virus that is plaguing the whole nation. But I'm more afraid of my kids being harassed by police officers than my babies getting COVID-19, and that's a shame. When my babies drive away, each time both of them came here, my other son goes to UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio, and my hair literally fell out in the top because I had to move him down there because he had to get acclimated in the city. And he's an engineer student. Both of my boys are great and they're smart. They're not perfect, but they law-abiding citizens and they don't do anything crazy. They got, the most they get is traffic tickets. They've never been arrested for any serious crimes or anything like that. But every time they drive away, my heart just drives away with them. My heart drives away with them because I can't, no matter what we do, I can't protect them from that. I can't protect them from that.
You said earlier you had a conversation with your sons when they were driving age about how to behave themselves and carry themselves when they come, so they can come home to you.
That's right. They can stay alive.
Did someone have that conversation with you?
With me? When I was coming up? Yes. And more so my husband coming from the deep South, living in Mississippi and Louisiana, right there on the border, coming up, he saw his uncles and cousins being, one of his uncles, his dad brothers were drugged out the house some years ago, and his cousin's dad was actually killed by, we don't know if the Klansmen or what. So he was brought up during that time where you just be quiet and don't say anything back and be respectful and just do whatever they say do and don't be confrontational or don't talk back. And so and that's what he grew up with, and that's what he started telling the boys. Now me myself, no one told me as a female what to do if you get stopped by the police officers. But from little bitty, he really started instilling that into the boys to respect the officers, do what they say do. And when they started learning to drive, we even practiced. We role played, what to do.
So what you're saying is your family has been plagued by a lot of mental, and I'll just say it, illness, because illness, it runs the gamut. It could be anxiety.
Yes.
It could be PTSD.
Yes.
But it looks like there's some PTSD there. And
definitely, most so. And my son tells him, Mommy, I was so afraid. Mommy, I was so afraid.
And I asked you that because I remember the conversation I had to have with my dad. I too went to Louisiana Tech, and though it's only
in Ruston, Louisiana.
It's only about a 60-mile drive from Shreveport. But when I had my car and being on that road, he literally drove with me the first time and kind of pointed out to me where the traffic stops were, typically where the officers would hide to try to trap people that were speeding or whatnot. And we role played. We went, even as a lot of people talk about, young men, but I think it's I have a fear for my child. When will it end? It's something that you were afraid of growing up. It's something that our previous generations, and that is my question. And I think something that bothers me is that as a community, we as Black people keep wondering, when will this end? What gives you hope?
When you say that about mental illness, I just brought to my attention the other day, that was Friday, I went to Walmart up on Highway 6 in Missouri City, Sugar Land. And the cops, those flashing lights, you're terrified, those flashing lights behind you. And I remember pulling over and I was so nervous, I couldn't even find my license and my registration. He came over to the door, he rolled the window down, and I was like, I told him I'm so nervous. And I knew I wasn't speeding, but that fear, that anxiety, you don't know how afraid I was, just because they always, I know it's for their safety, but they always have a hand on their gun when they reach over. And I was so afraid, I didn't even ask him why was he stopping me. And then finally he said, it's okay. And he was very nice to me. He wasn't mean or anything. He told me, he allowed me to get myself together. And then he told me about my backlight was blinking. But that terror and that fear,
I have that same fear.
The terror and that fear, those blinking lights. I'm like, oh God, I started to call my husband and tell him I'm being pulled over. I knew I wasn't speeding, and I knew it was probably something minor because I don't speed. I make sure I drive the speed limit. I make sure I do everything correctly because I don't want to be pulled over. Because I think about Sandra Bland, it was a simple traffic stop in her life.
Right. I think about 10 and 2. I was told by someone who was a former officer, he said, make sure your arm, they're visible and they're 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. And I'm thinking, like, all the education, all the degrees, I probably have had 2 tickets in my life, never been in trouble, never gone to jail. I've done everything right, but I'm still terrified of being pulled over. I mean, I almost, if I see a cop, I may not be speeding, but I automatically hit my brake. Like, I'm just like, okay, why? You're not even speeding. So there's something that needs to be dealt with as a society. We've got to look at getting probably therapy, counseling. I think, it's taboo a lot of times for African Americans, but these are some things that I think we need to work through. Let's talk a little bit about, let's shift it a little bit. Where were you when you heard about George Floyd? He attended the same high school you attended. What went through your mind?
I was just totally shocked and outraged that a man died right before so many people who was, what you said, it was that many people who were afraid and terrified of 3 other officers. We outnumbered them, but they were afraid to even go near. And the sad thing about it, my good friend, son, Maurice, was in the car with George. And he's really dealing with some mental illness and because he was so helpless. And now that we heard body cam, the last thing that Maurice heard George say, I love you, Reese. Can you imagine how he felt? And he was not able. So it just doesn't end there with the protests. It doesn't end. It's not going to end with the trials. Maurice had to live with this the rest of his life mentally, that he was in the SUV with him. And as he came and they got George out the SUV, they told them that they could not get out that car. So he had to sit and watch his friend die. And he couldn't do anything about it. At the time, I didn't know that Maurice was with them until later. My friend shared it with me. I didn't know. So I knew he was a Jack Yates alumni, and my brother went to school with him. And my brother called me, my younger brother, who's around his age. George is a little younger than him. And my nickname is Honey. He said, honey, I'm gonna make you remember him. He was a tall guy. He was a tall boy that we went to Turner, and they actually played Little League football together. And he said he was a tall guy. And I just remember, I didn't remember anything particular about him until he brought it to my attention. He was just a tall kid with those long arms, and they were eating popsicles in the yard. One day they came and I gave them popsicles. That's the only thing I could actually remember. And I remember this just playing Little League football, but I was just, and even when I heard the connection, I was just really taken away.
It's taken back by everything that's happened.
Yes.
And I know the good thing is that the alumni there is really supporting the family and speaking about it. There was a vigil held. I saw it online.
I attend all the vigils. I try to attend everything.
Okay. Oh, because I saw you. I think I saw you there.
Yes,
Maybe that's how I made contact with you. So there's so much healing that's needed for all of us. we really appreciate you sharing your story because there are so many similar stories. No matter where we live,
Exactly.
you know, we're not exempt.
Exactly.
And so we have to continue to work toward mental wholeness and wellness. And finally, I'll point out, your outlet is dance. Is it dance?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been teaching dance for 100 years. Yes.
Tell us what that's like.
You know, dance is therapy. I have a lot of kids who have gone through a lot of emotional trauma, and my philosophy is not to dance to it, you dance through it.
I love it.
And, you know, perform on your stage of life, no matter what, even when the curtains are drawn and no one is applauding, you still must get up and perform.
So it looks like a universal theme. We've got to engage in something healthy, and that's what the Chamber stands for. That's why we created the show. We want to let people know that even when you're going through the tough times and the rough times, that you've got to find an outlet, whether it's poetry or music or exercising or dancing, whatever it is. But there needs to be unity and there needs to be healing. So we definitely appreciate you. We applaud you for being a good mother and young African-American boys that are educated, and just reminding everyone that we all need to do our part. So
Exactly.
thank you so much.
It takes a village.
It takes a village. So we want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll be back again. But as we continue to talk about mental healing, emotional wellness, we'll continue to come to you.